Hogan, and I'm a detective with Atlanta Police.
Good morning, Detective Hogan.
Good morning to you, sir.
Can you tell the court how you are currently employed, sir?
I am a detective with Atlanta Police. Currently, I'm assigned to General Investigations out on Fulton Industrial, but prior to that, I was a homicide investigator for about 10 years.
And Detective Hogan, can you tell the jurors how long you have been employed with the City of Atlanta Police Department?
I have been certified police officer since 1987. Had a couple of different jobs with the Sheriff's Departments and with the Air Marshals, but anyway, I landed in Atlanta about 15 years ago.
And you said you had been a police officer since 1987. Prior to working with the City of Atlanta Police Department, where were you in law enforcement?
I started in the jail in Fayette County, was there for a few months. They put me on the road, was certified then in 1987. Worked as a road deputy in Fayette County. I was promoted to detective, worked undercover narcotics locally, and then I was assigned for a good many years, 10 years or so, to the DEA task force at the Atlanta airport. We did drug interdictions there. In between there, I spent a brief period of time as a federal air marshal. This was before 9/11, and that job wasn't for me, so I came back. And that's when I went on through with DEA and then eventually landed in Atlanta about 15 years ago.
Now, you a few minutes ago told the jurors that you were assigned with the Homicide Department for 10 years?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, were you assigned with the Homicide Unit here with the City of Atlanta Police Department back in February of 2019?
I was, yes.
And can you tell the jurors a little bit about, I guess, how you're assigned specifically to any homicide case that you're working here in the City of Atlanta?
It is the luck of the draw. We're all in a rotation. There's a big board in the office. There's about 17 of us that are in the rotation, about 6 of us that work cold cases. At the time, I was in the rotation, and your name is on a magnetic strip with a label on it, and everybody's name's in a row or in a column. As murders occur, the person from the top catches the murders. He's the lead, he or she's the lead investigator, and they go to the bottom, and everybody moves up. On this particular day, I was at the top.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors on February 23rd of 2019, were you dispatched or called to come out to the location of 50 Mount Zion Road?
Yes, I was.
And can you tell the jurors what was the reason you were dispatched to that location?
There had been a homicide, a criminal homicide, what they suspected to be a criminal homicide, and they asked homicide to come to work the case.
And is that address 50 Mount Zion Road? Is that here in the City of Atlanta, Fulton County?
It is. It's in southeast Atlanta.
Okay. And when you, I guess, can you tell the jurors, we've heard about different zones that are within the City of Atlanta. Which zone does this location fall within?
Zone 3.
Okay. And the Zone 3, does that include the area of like Cleveland Avenue?
It does, yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors when you arrived to the incident location, can you kind of describe for them what kind of property it was? Was it a business? Was it a residential location?
It's an apartment complex.
Okay. And were you the first to arrive on scene?
No, sir.
Can you tell the jurors? Now, with not being the first to arrive and being, I guess, assigned as the lead detective because you're number 1 in the rotation, can you tell the jurors a little bit about the first things that you do when you interact with other first responders who arrive before you, other officers and detectives?
Sure. So they, just by the act of being there and doing their job, they've gathered some information that may be interesting to me or help me with my investigation. So of course, I get there, observe, how things are laid out. They have delineated the crime scene and what they think the crime scene is, so they marked that out with yellow tape, trying to make that a pretty big area. This particular one was a fairly big crime scene. So I could see that when I pull in, and then I speak with the two officers that are watching the crime scene log. I speak with the general investigator who has started the crime scene drawing. I talk with the ID technicians that are there that are, and I assist them and make sure that any evidence that I see on the scene that I'm interested in or like for them to gather or document, I make sure they do that. And I just try to glean as much information from what they have from them so I can help me further my investigation.
Now, after speaking with other members of law enforcement who were on scene before you, can you kind of describe, I guess, the layout? You said that this was an apartment complex or a residential complex. A little bit about the layout of the complex as you first observed it when you arrived.
Yeah, it's a large complex. It's in two phases. There's a Mount Zion Road. Obviously, it faces Mount Zion. The address is 50 Mount Zion. Then there's a phase, I'll call it phase 1, which is in the front that's up closest to Mount Zion. There's a creek that runs behind that phase 1 is a creek, so there's a bridge and an access road down one side of it. I think it's the east side of the property that goes past over the creek, and then there's a large recreational area, a big grass field, and then a playground for kids. And then the second phase is in the back, but there's only one way in and out to get to the second phase. And it's in the back of the property across the creek. This crime scene encompassed all of the access road to get to the phase 2, and all the way up into a pretty good portion of phase 2 where the road runs up into the parking lots, the access into the buildings in the phase 2.
So in a second, Detective Hogan, we're going to put up State's Exhibit 11NN, which was previously admitted into evidence.
Yes, sir.
Can you see it on the screen?
I do.
Okay, so do you see at the top of State's Exhibit 11NN, there's, I guess, a red line that's drawn. It's right by where the time is, where it says 9:33 a.m.
Right there you're talking about?
Yes. Can you tell the jurors, is that building that you can kind of barely see at the top of State's Exhibit 11NN, is that the first phase or the first building of the complex?
That's correct, yes.
And then do you see in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN, it looks like something, looks like a brown kind of, something that's separating the grass in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN?
Right here.
So, in the middle of State's Exhibit 11NN, you see trees, and there's this.
Oh, that's the creek. Okay. There's the bridge.
And then it's the area you described, I guess, where the playground and things, the recreation area.
It's under here, under the trees, back over here in this area.
Okay, so it's towards the, I guess, the left side, kind of middle of State's Exhibit 11NN.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, now you described to the jurors briefly about the second phase or the second half of the apartment complex. Do you see that phase in a State's Exhibit 11NN?
I do. It's this phase here.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors what areas in State's Exhibit 11NN, if you can see it, I guess, were pertinent to your investigation in relation to the crime scene?
Immediately when I pulled up, I parked in the parking lot up here, if you can imagine the phase, because that Mount Zion Road would be up here. I parked my car outside the crime scene tape and walked in. I checked in with the crime scene technician. Immediately I could see that there was a blue car resting against the fence, and I think there was a big rock there it ran into right here, where there was some stuff on the ground and stuff on the car. And as I walked up, of course, that's going to be pretty interesting. It's not supposed to be there. So So, as I walked up, I saw that it, was part of the crime scene. There was blood in the passenger seat, there were bullet holes in the car, there were shell casings on top of the car. Items of clothing were on the ground and on top of the car. And then as I walked further past, I could see there were some tire tracks that were through the grass here, beside the building here, as well as more shell casings that were kind of scattered out in this area over here. And then they had crime scene tape stretched out across here and across there to deny any access into the crime scene.
Now, you talked about crime scene tape and things of that nature. When you arrived, had the crime scene been fully secured?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jurors a little bit about how that's done and why that's done?
Yeah, well, we're trying to preserve evidence. Everything in there may have something of value to us that we could use to further investigation. So obviously, we don't want anybody to tamper that either on purpose or by accident. So we try to protect it. We try to make it as big as the officers that responded made it as big as they thought they needed to protect everything that I just described to you. The shell casings are easily kicked or moved. We don't want to touch anything that may have DNA or fingerprint evidence on it. There's just lots of things we need to try to protect so we don't damage our own investigation.
And Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 48 NN through 67 NN. If you'll just flip through those, have you had an opportunity to go through those prior to your testimony here today?
I've seen them before, yes.
And as you're flipping through them, I guess, what are State's Exhibits 48 NN through 67 NN?
These are all crime scene photographs from the scene.
And do the photographs in State's Exhibits 48 NN through 67 NN fairly and accurately depict the crime scene, 50 Mount Zion Road, when you arrived on February 23rd of 2019?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time the state would tender what's been marked as State's Exhibit 48 NN through 67 NN.
Those are admitted.
Now, you talked about the area of, I guess, where you said it was a blue vehicle,
Yes.
and in your investigations, did you determine what type of vehicle it was?
I do. It was let me look at my notes here for the year model, but it was a Dodge Charger.
Just looking at your report,
Yes.
help refresh your recollection?
Say again?
Is reviewing your report, will that assist you in the refreshing?
Yes, I'm just trying to get a 2014 Dodge Charger.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, when you arrived and began to investigate and look around the Dodge Charger, was it occupied? Was there anybody in it?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you tell the jurors, you talked about the tire marks that you had seen. Can you describe the condition of the vehicle as you began to investigate and process the vehicle?
Well, we had run the tag, or somebody run the tag, and it came back stolen out of Cobb County. It did have some defects in it. It had several, which appeared to be bullet holes to me, from my experience. And there were 12 of them total. Again, there was a large amount of blood in the passenger seat, front passenger seat, and some clothing. A baseball hat was on top of the car. There was a projectile that fell out of the hat when we picked it up. And then there was, other items inside the car that were gathered and
Okay.
documented.
In a second, Ms. Knight is going to put up State's Exhibit 15 NN, which has been previously admitted into evidence. Actually, 16 NN. And in 16 NN, Detective Hogan, can you kind of point out for the jurors the areas in which you just described as defects? I think you said 12 in the Dodge Charger.
Yep. You can look pretty close, you can see whatever's kind of out of place. In this particular image, my memory serves right, this white is a defect. You can see the different whites that stand out pretty readily, and you can see why I'm assuming they're bullet holes. But in that particular picture, I see four defects.
Okay. And you said that around the car, was there, I guess, ballistic evidence also located, I guess, on the car and surrounding it?
Yes, there were shell casings. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how many, but there was 2 or 3 on top of the car. I think maybe that's what that is. But there was up here were spent shell casings. They'd been fired and ejected out of the car, out of the gun and landed on top of the car.
And can you?
Objection, Your Honor, that's speculation.
Sustained.
Well, you said they were spent shell casings. How did you know that they were spent?
They didn't have the bullet in them anymore.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, as you're kind of walking around and observing and processing the scene, are you being assisted by members of the Atlanta Police Department's crime scene tech unit?
Yes, and they were there before me, and they started working the crime scene, so they were really very familiar. They showed me a lot of stuff, and then I just went in behind them and made sure that everything they showed me I was interested in, and make sure that if there's anything that I saw they didn't know about, and make sure they knew about it to gather it.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as it relates to your working in conjunction with the crime scene techs that were present that early morning, what type of shell casing do you remember was identified as the shell casings found around the car and in the general area?
On the car, and then a little further up on the crime scene, they were all smaller caliber shell cases, like 9 millimeters.
Okay.
Later on, we did find some 7.62 as well, some larger caliber.
And you said around the car, and then I guess a little bit further up from the car. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 52 NN. Can you tell the jurors when it comes up what to your recollection, the yellow placards in this photo are marking or representing?
Sure. You can barely see them on this one, but there's a little yellow square there and another one up around the corner. Those are placards. They have numbers on them. ID techs, when they document stuff, they document it right where it says. So they put the placards up next to or adjacent to the pieces of evidence, and then take pictures and document where they found it. Later on, after they do that, then they'll gather the evidence, and it will be delineated on their report by that number, whatever number it was nearest to the piece of evidence. But this, if you can imagine, if you were in this picture, if you turned around directly 180 degrees, that's the access road that goes out to the front of the property, and then the blue car is down right behind you.
Now, if you are looking at the right side of State's Exhibit 52 and it looks like a raindrop that reflected off from the photo, but you see where there's a vehicle or a red car kind of in the middle right-hand side of State's Exhibit 52 NN?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, if you continue to go straight down the access road and take a right where that red vehicle is, can you tell them where would that take you?
That takes you into the parking lot in between two of the buildings in the complex.
Okay. And is that the buildings that, I guess, would be the front buildings, the first one we saw that was closest to Mount Zion Road, or the back set of buildings?
That's right.
That's what?
The back set,
Backside. Okay.
phase two.
Now, you referenced or talked to the jurors a little bit about the fact that there were additional shell casings that were found in a different area in relation to the vehicle.
That's correct.
Can you kind of describe for the jurors, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 10NN. And using State's Exhibit 10NN, Detective Hogan, can you kind of orient the jurors as to the area that you described that you found the second set of shell casings?
Sure. Well, I told you about the shell cases that were on top of the car. Those were 9mm. There were several more that were scattered around in the roadway and in the grass over here in this area. And then there were several that were found in the grass. These are the larger caliber shell casings over here. Over here at the corner of the building and around and on top of the car were 9mm. The larger caliber 7.62 were in this area.
And if you can recall, in that area that you just kind of described and oriented the jurors to, where the second set of shell casings you found, how many did you find? Looking at your report will refresh your recollection.
Yeah, let me look and see. I don't remember.
If and when your recollection is refreshed, just look up and I'll re-ask you the question. If it helps, I can direct you to maybe page 4.
Yeah, if you would, because it's not jumping out at me.
Yeah, if you look to page 4 of your report, and if that helps refresh your recollection towards the bottom.
Oh, 15. Thank you.
All right.
15 7.262 caliber shell cases.
So it sounds like after looking at page 4 of your report, your recollection's refreshed?
It is refreshed.
Okay. And you described them to be a larger type of, or larger caliber of ballistics or shell casings. Can you describe to the jurors a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, a handgun is a smaller caliber, usually somewhat smaller caliber. Police carry 9mm or 40 calibers. Each caliber is a different size. So each shell casing is going to be a different size to accommodate whatever size bullet it shoots. For example, the 9mm the bullets are about as big approximately as into your pinky finger. So the shell casing has to be the size for that to fit in. A 7.62 is normally associated with a long rifle, like an assault rifle. And it's a much bigger bullet. It has a lot more gunpowder behind it. It shoots a lot faster and longer. So the shell casing for that is going to be larger and distinctive for that caliber of weapon.
And based on your investigation, is it, or based on what you saw and observed, were, I guess, all of the shell casings that you saw as larger, the 7.62, kind of grouped in one area?
Yes,
And
they were all
then
found in one area.
the shell casings that you described earlier, a few minutes ago, that you said were smaller caliber or 9mm, were those all kind of grouped within, one small area, separate and distinct from the 7.62?
The majority of the shell casings the 9mm were discovered here. The only
show us.
exception to those would be the ones that were found on top of the vehicle when it was abandoned.
Now, can you tell the jurors, do you see the red line that kind of travels throughout State's Exhibit 10NN?
The long one?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, based on the investigation at that point, the shell casings that you had found in different areas and the tire marks that you described, why, I guess, that red line is there and what it represents?
For me, that was, I created this, so, I know it's pretty rudimentary, but I'm not a computer guy. The little red dots it's not accurate, but it just indicates where the shell casings were found. This was a line based on my investigation of where.
We can see now.
That they had parked. And this is the access that they took trying to get out when the shooting broke out. So there was a shooter that came out here when it started shooting. They drove out. Another shooter down here drove past, walked. Well, you can see the tire tracks in the grass. Drove off the road, back on the road. The car was not functioning, so they rolled to a stop here and then exited. It's just a line to kind of show where I thought they went when the incident happened.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked and tendered and admitted into evidence. It states that it's 59NN. And in this photo, do you see kind of the grouping of the yellow placards that are seen within States Exhibit 59NN?
Yeah, same procedure as what I described earlier. Where there is a shell casing, they put a placard, and next to it is a corresponding number that indicates that particular shell casing. This is coming out from the Rick Breezeway, and this is where they, all the different placards indicate the different shell casings that were found.
And do you see kind of in the middle of States Exhibit 59 and then towards the, I guess, the breezeway? Let's see if we can get this out your way. There we go. In this area right here?
Yes.
Are those placards, are they also the larger caliber shell casings?
Yeah, they were all the same shell casing.
Okay.
Caliber.
And are photographs taken of each placard from, you know, a far away distance or a full range distance, mid range, and then close up?
Yes.
Okay. To your recollection, was that done in this case?
I wasn't present, but I'm assuming they do it the same way every time.
Okay. And for time and efficiency, is that what we see in States Exhibit 60NN through 67NN?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after you completed kind of walking through the scene with members of the City of Atlanta's crime scene unit, while on scene, did you get information that two males had contacted 911 indicating they had witnessed what happened at 50 Mount Zion Road?
I did.
Okay. And I don't want you to tell me what anyone said as I go through the next questions. As a result of that, did you go to APD headquarters just down the street here off of Peachtree?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, when you arrived, did you speak to the two males?
I did.
And without telling me what they said, can you tell the jurors who you spoke to that early morning?
Sure, is Bernard Mitchell and Rodney Uten.
Okay.
Two witnesses we're not gonna
Can you explain to the
see.
jurors, without telling me what they said, kind of the circumstances and of the setup of the interview. Let's start with that.
Oh, it was just an interview. Well, there's two different areas at headquarters that we speak to people in. One's the interview room. It's just like if you guys came in and had something to tell us, we put you in the interview room and we speak with you. The other is what they call interrogation, or when they're in custody. In those rooms, you're secured, chained to the floor, and both rooms are audio and video recorded. Both types of rooms.
And you said they were in the first room, the interview room that you described?
They were in yes, witness room.
Can you tell the jurors, do you interview them together or do you interview them separately?
They were done separately at different times. Same, one after the other.
And after speaking with both Mr. Uber, they were in the first room, the interview room that you described?
They were in yes, witness room.
Can you tell
This
the jurors,
better
do you
for
interview them
volume?
together or do you interview
There's no
them
captions.
separately?
They were done separately at different times. Same, one after the other.
And after speaking with both Mr. Uten and Mr. Mitchell, can you tell the jurors, do you speak with a female, Miss M. Smith, after speaking with both Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten?
That's correct, yes.
And can you tell the jurors, do you speak with her that same day, later on February 23rd of 2019, or at a later date?
It was on the same day, on the 23rd.
Okay. And can you kind of explain to the jurors in relation to when you arrived to the scene and kind of worked and processed the scene with members of the police department, about how long after you arrived did you begin to interview people in relation to your investigation?
Multiple times in the report. It all came together fairly quickly once it started rolling. Let me see if I notated it in my report. Do you know specifically in the report where I need to be looking?
Let me ask you generally this question based on your recollection. Was it a matter of hours that you began speaking with witnesses, for example, Mr. Uten and Mr. Mitchell?
It was all in the morning time, yeah. It was like 6 in the morning when I got to the crime scene. It was well before lunch when I was talking to Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Uten.
Okay. And when you spoke to Ms. Smith, can you tell the jurors kind of the setup or the arrangement for that interview?
That was in the witness area. It was later on in the day. I think it was after lunch, thereabouts. But same, voluntary. She came in and I spoke with her.
And when you're speaking with Ms. Smith, is it just you and Ms. Smith, or are there any other members of your team that are also present?
Detective Casey was with me.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as you began the interview with...
You're talking about Mariah, right? With Ms. Smith? Or with the other two?
So I'm talking about Ms. Smith.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Detective Casey was with me, yes.
Yes. So can you tell the jurors, when you began the interview with Ms. Smith, can you kind of describe for the jurors her general demeanor that early morning?
Sure, yeah, she was upset, nervous, crying, young girl, and you can imagine, she said she was a witness to a shooting and a murder, and she was upset.
Objection, proper bolster.
Now, as you began the interview, can you tell the jurors, how did you start?
Sure, well, I started all the same way. I introduced myself, and we start talking about, and I asked, talking about the situation that they witnessed, and I asked for their statement, and she began by telling me a series of events that she relayed to me at that time that I knew were not to be correct based on what I knew from the crime scene.
Okay. And when you say knew what not to be correct in relation to the crime scene, can you explain to the jurors, I guess, what you mean by that?
Yeah, she was saying that this victim had been shot by one of his companions. The way she described it, it was not possible, based on what I knew from the crime scene. So I brought that to her attention. After some consoling and some speaking with her by me, she realized that she changed the story to what the truth was, which we knew that she was not telling the truth.
Okay. And as you continued, I guess, to confront her with the physical evidence that you had located on the scene and through your investigation while on scene, did she provide you with names or nicknames of individuals she knew to be involved?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And do you recall, or can you tell the jurors the nicknames that she told you of the people she saw shooting that night?
Yes.
And if referring to your report would help refresh your recollection, by all means.
One was Little Rod and Bali.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, as she described what she saw, did she tell you, or tell the jurors what she told you about the firearms that she saw Little Rod and Bali having?
Judge, Your Honor, I'm going to object that this is improper bolstering. She's already testified to this.
This is impeachment, Your Honor. She testified she couldn't recall at times during her testimony as it related to the firearms, what they look like.
All right, I have no problem mentioning that there is a march starting for 7 a.m. for Thug, but is this like at the courthouse or just for like the actual details? But yeah, so I think it's interesting that we have him confirm, I knew she was lying. It didn't make sense with the crime scene. So I get why Carton Matthews and then now Miss Abbasi are saying, a little bit of bolstering there. We had some testimony on this yesterday. So we'll see what happens after this approach. Yeah, she also said she lied. And that's the thing, like, the jury gets to determine what they think is credible or not credible. Ike says my closing right there. Everybody is lying, has attempted to lie, or admitted to lying, not just to investigators and police, but right here on the stand. Nothing is as it seems. I mean, it hits all the points. It hits all the points. Also, big thank you. Tons of kindness in the chat today. We have April O'Neill's baby daddy gifting 1 Catnut Williams membership. Thank you so much, April O'Neill's baby daddy. Leah's dad says, I try to give Paige the benefit of the doubt, but this is crazy as. And yeah, I mean, I don't trust the state, and I hate that she always seems, when it comes to one attorney being truthful and the other being truthful, she decides the state more often than not, well, really across the board. I don't really know if there's been an exception. She trusts the state. It always leans in favor of the state. Well, you think Abadi has a perfect memory? And he's been dishonest before.
You've been describing the fact that the first part of the interview you had with Ms. Smith, she gave you a number of facts and scenarios that were not aligned with what you knew to be consistent with your investigation at the crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
And as your interview with Ms. Smith continued, I believe you indicated earlier about the statements that Ms. Smith made going forward about what she observed on that early morning of February 23rd of 2019 as it related to the shooting. The facts that she relayed to you after you confronted her with what you knew to be true about the physical evidence on the crime scene, the facts that she was giving you, did they become consistent with what you knew through your investigation at the crime scene.
They did become consistent, yes.
Okay, and as you continued to interview Miss Smith, did she continue to provide you statements as it related to what she saw and heard that were consistent with what you've described to this?
Your Honor, leading the witness.
Ruled based on our discussion at the bench.
So let me see if I can remember what I was asking you. So as she continued to describe things that she saw and heard and observed on the crime scene that early morning when the shooting was occurring, were those statements consistent with what you knew that you found on the crime scene earlier during your investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, we talked a little bit about, she was able to provide nicknames. Can you tell the jurors, without telling me what she told you, but was she able to provide you with Instagram handles or usernames for the two people she gave you nicknames for?
Yes.
Okay. And as a result, I guess in conjunction with that, was she actually able to pull them up and show you photographs as it related to the person she knew as Little Rod?
Yes.
Okay, and I want to show you what's already been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 23NN and 24NN. While she's pulling it up, I will give you a physical copy so you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
And while Ms. Knight is pulling it up, if we can get the technology to work, are those the photographs that Ms. Smith was able to provide you in relation to the person she knew to be Little Rod?
That's correct, yes.
And can you tell the jurors, do you see her signature on those photographs?
I do.
Don't pull it up. And can you tell the jurors what date is her signature on those two photographs?
The 24th of February of 19.
Okay. And was Ms. Smith able to do the same thing as it relates to the person she knew to be Mr. Bali?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you tell the jurors, after receiving this information from Ms. Smith as it related to who she saw shooting, can you tell the jurors, were you able to determine the identity of the people she knew to be Bali and Little Rod?
Yes.
Okay, and who were those people?
Little Rod's name is Rodalius Ryan Jr. Bali's name is Damon Blalock.
And let's see. Now, before we move on from Ms. Smith's interview, can you explain to the jurors, so during Ms. Smith's interview, you described how you confronted her with the physical evidence as it relates to the statement she made initially at the beginning of the interview. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell the jurors, when you confronted Ms. Smith with the fact that what she was saying didn't make sense with what you already knew, did you tell her the identities of the people who were shooting?
No.
Did you, before speaking to Ms. Smith, have any idea who they were?
I didn't know him from a can of paint. No, sir.
And was that something she was able to tell you based on what she described as what she saw and heard that early morning on February 23rd of 2019.
That's correct, yep.
And while you were interviewing Ms. Smith, did you provide her with any facts as it related to the identities of Mr. Ryan or Mr. Blalock during that interview?
No, sir.
Okay, and was that information that she was able to provide, or did she provide you information that assisted in your investigation in identifying both Little Rod and Mr. Blalock?
That's correct.
Now, after speaking with Ms. Smith, can you tell the jurors, did you attempt to identify another female described to you during Ms. Smith's interview?
Yes.
And can you tell the jurors, who was that?
Her nickname was Brazen. She was with Miss Smith.
And if, your report.
Tyhera Hartfield. Oh, excuse me, that's her mom. Oh, yeah, Tyhera Hartfield. That's right.
So it sounds like using your report refreshed your recollections?
Yes.
Okay. And in your identifying Ms. Hartfield, can you tell the jurors, based on your investigation into Ms. Hartfield, what her living situation was?
She was a runaway, listed as a runaway at the time.
And ultimately, before, let me ask you this question. Based on the information that you've talked about here today, can you tell the jurors, did you make charging decisions?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did you swear out warrants for the arrest of Mr. Ryan and Mr. Blalock?
Eventually I did, yes.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, did you ultimately get to speak with Ms. Hartfield?
I did.
Okay. And without telling me what she said, did you, I guess, speak or interview her in a similar fashion that you've described as it relates to Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Uten, and Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Okay. And during your investigation, can you tell the jurors, did you also receive a social media posting as it related to Mr. Ryan hours after the homicide?
Yes.
Okay. And was that something that you used and utilized in your investigation in taking out the warrants that you've described?
Yes.
One moment. Aaron, I don't have any further questions pending redirect.
Did you really get I get that he's like lining up the stuff about the shell casings, and I feel like the crime scene testimony he gave was much more compelling, although a little bit boring. I didn't really. Do you guys think Abate effectively impeached Mariah? Because remember, Mariah was telling things that could go either way, things that made it seem like Lil Rod wasn't doing something, things that make it seem like Lil Rod was doing something. So Abate's goal is to impeach the stuff that doesn't help his case, right? And I don't really think the second half here did that, and he's passing the witness already. So,
All right, are there defense questions for this witness?
There are. I just want to make sure I can get a hold of at least one of these.
Okay.
Please be the video. Show us the video.